We continue to follow breaking news here at 5. A Manhattan grand jury has indicted former President Donald Trump for his role in hush money payments to an adult entertainer, Stormy Daniels, during his 2016 presidential campaign. One of Trump's lawyers confirms he has been told of the indictment, but the specific charges have not been revealed. He is the first U.S. president to ever be charged with a crime.
We have a live look right now at the district attorney's office in New York City. Trump's lawyers have said that he will cooperate and surrender to face arraignment. He denies any wrongdoing here, and he has ridiculed this entire investigation. This is, of course, also a major development in the 2024 presidential race, as Trump has indicated that he wants to run for re-election. The news is likely to galvanize both his supporters and detractors. And this is a live picture of Mar-a-Lago, Trump's home in Florida. Of course, we'll be watching this very closely. But we want to talk to our legal expert here, Karen Conti, to ask her more about this investigation. Karen, thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
Let's talk about this. We know that this indictment has just come down. It was voted on. How strong does this case have to be for it to get to this point?
Well, the grand jury was made up of 23 members, and it had to be the majority of them had to vote in favor. And remember, our grand jury sits there because the state's attorney here was feeding the jury information that they found to be persuasive that there should be an indictment. So Donald Trump really didn't have a chance to defend himself much at all during the course of this. So it's not surprising that there is an indictment.
So how do you expect all of this to play out? What can we expect to see in the coming days?
Well, this arrest is going to be done probably with the cooperation of the government and his lawyers. There's not going to be a perp walk. He's going to go into the office. He's going to go through his fingerprinting and his mugshot, and it's all going to be done by agreement. There are serious security issues attendant to indicting a former president and someone as controversial as Donald Trump. So they're not going to do anything here that's going to endanger anybody in this whole piece.
You know, I think it's important to note here that this is a state charge, not federal. What is the significance of that as this case moves forward?
Well, the significance is that it's going to be done in the state of New York, and it's a case that of all the cases that have been investigating Donald Trump and all the jurisdictions that have been investigating, this is probably the most trivial in that it's really just a misdemeanor to misclassify business records, unless they're going to tie it to campaign finance laws and tax laws, and then it might be a felony. Even so, it's not a huge crime in the grand scheme when you look at the January 6th issue, you look at the Mar-a-Lago documents issue, or the interference with election down in Georgia.
And a conviction in this case, is it a slam dunk?
It's not a slam dunk. Basically, they are going to have to prove that Donald Trump knew that this money was going to be paid. He authorized it to be paid, and he authorized it to be done and put on the books in such a way that was false. And listen, Donald Trump had a lot of advisors around him. He had Michael Cohen, he had a CEO, he had accountants, and he's going to say that he relied upon the advice of his professionals around him in making his decisions. And he's a busy man, he's a businessman, he transacts thousands of transactions in a week, and that he did not know this was being booked in the wrong way.
You know, Karen, I mentioned that this is a state charge, not federal. And I want to point to the fact that federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, they actually opted out of charging Trump related to the payment in 2019, even as Cohen implicated him as part of his plea deal. Do you think that will play as this case moves forward?
I mean, that can't be something that will be argued at trial, like, hey, the federal prosecutors declined, so therefore he's innocent. I just think that's going to be talked about. And again, you know, there's going to be this idea that the prosecutor is trying to make a name for himself. He took a charge that the federal government wouldn't take and now wants to make his own name for himself. But again, the charges are what they are. And this jury is going to be tasked with looking at a lot of documents, listening to a lot of testimony, and really being under the spotlight here.
Two-part question. How long could it take for this entire thing to play out? And also, the big question, how could this impact his chances of getting into the White House in 2024?
Well, my guess is that it will take a while to get to trial. And my guess it will be a year or a year and a half. And I say that because there are going to be a lot of documents that have to be produced. His lawyers are going to have to look over the documents and do what they need to do to prepare for trial. And as you see, even in our county, when you see the Michael Madigan indictments and those types of things, they take a long time to get to trial. And my guess is that Donald Trump is going to kick the can down the road as far as he can and make the most of it. As far as how it impacts his run for presidency, there's nothing in the Constitution that says an indicted person or a convicted person cannot run for president. So, and we've had a situation where someone who ran for office for presidency was actually in a jail cell during that time. That was Eugene Debs. So he can run. There's no question. Politically, how is that going to affect it? You have to ask, some political person, but my guess is that it might help him in some ways because he's going to be the martyr and he's going to talk about the witch hunt and he's going to talk about it's me versus them. And so that'll be very interesting to watch how that actually affects his candidacy.
Karen, is there any legal precedent of any person to Donald Trump's stature to be charged in a way like this?
Yes, I mean, there's been, the Speaker of the House, Denny Hastert actually was, I think, one of the highest ranking politicians in the country to be charged. And that, obviously, he was from Illinois, and that was having to do with the hush money that he paid for some issues he had back when he was a school teacher, as you recall. So, no, but there's no precedent for a president or a former president or someone really running in serious contention for presidency being indicted.
And to Tia's question as well, to Tia's point, what are the optics of this, on a national stage and also an international stage?
Yeah, I think, the various countries in the world think differently of Donald Trump than we do. I think, having traveled to about 45 countries in my life and having traveled quite a bit in the last 6 years, I think I hear that people don't really understand the pull to Donald Trump. They just don't understand it. They don't get why he is so popular. Because I think other countries portray him in a negative fashion, to my understanding. But again, for people who like Donald Trump, this is going to do nothing to dissuade them that he's the greatest thing in the world. And for people who don't like him, that's just going to confirm their opinion that he's not a good guy.
Karen, you said something that was very important to me. Obviously, this is an indictment, then there's an arraignment, and you said that this could take quite some time to really play out. Is this a situation where there will be several appeals? How could this move forward from the legal team, at least on Donald Trump's side?
Well, the documents will be exchanged. It's called discovery, and his lawyers, and I'm sure he's going to have a cadre of very, very good lawyers, and they're going to look over the evidence. The trial will be set. It'll probably be continued several times, and it will play out in the courtroom. Donald Trump will likely not testify, would be my guess. And he will say that, there will be, his experts will be up there telling the jury that they were the ones who gave him advice to do this. And then whatever happens, there'll be an appeal. Of course, there'll be an appeal. Again, what the appellate issues are going to be, we don't know. We have no idea what's going to transpire. So this process will go on for a long period of time. And if you look at how Donald Trump has litigated things in the past, he moves things very slowly. He throws in all of the wrenches that he possibly can. So I think we are going to expect to see a lot of that.
Okay, and the spectacle of this, could we see Stormy Daniels testify as a witness?
We could. And my guess is that the prosecutor will drag her in there and make this into the spectacle. I think Michael Cohen's testimony is going to be very telling. I think the documents are going to be telling. My guess, from what I understand, from what I've seen so far, is that there are going to be a lot of communications back and forth about how this was to be done. Also, the former CEO that owns the National Enquirer testified a couple of days ago, and he was doing this catch and kill where he would pay off some of these women to get the story and then not run the story to help Donald Trump. And my guess is he's going to testify as well to show that there was this plan and this scheme to get Donald Trump elected. And by doing these kinds of hush money things, that was helping his campaign.
Now, Karen, if I'm not mistaken, and you can correct me on this, I believe New York is one of a handful of states that does not allow cameras inside the courtroom. So how will that play out for Donald Trump in this case?
Yeah, it's a shame because it seems to me that of all the trials that we want to see, this would be the one we would want to see. And of course, the media are probably going to file lawsuits to try to get cameras in the courtroom, saying that this is an extraordinary situation and that the world is watching this and that we need to see it, so we make sure that he gets justice and that we see what's going on. But my guess is there probably won't be cameras in the courtroom if it's barred by New York law.
You know, similar to the Michael Madigan case that we're watching play out right now in our state, there's a lot of players in this, a lot of people that have been implicated and caught up in this. Could we see this kind of snowball and then other high-profile people get caught up and implicated as well?
I don't think so. I think the people who are implicated have already been implicated. And what the government generally does when they prosecute is they go for the lower people and they bring charges against them with the hopes that they will testify against the person who's one notch up. And you don't get any further up the notching than Donald Trump. So I think will be the end of at least this portion of charges. Like I said before, there are other charges and other grand juries sitting right now who may charge Donald Trump later with other crimes that are unrelated to this one.
Now, let's say that Donald Trump is convicted in this, Karen. What would be the penalties here?
It's hard to say because we don't know what the charges are. Obviously, if it's a misdemeanor, he probably won't do any jail time. But if the misdemeanor, the mischaracterizing of documents, business records, is tied to campaign fraud or is tied to tax fraud, then that could be a tax or campaign issue, and that could land him, I mean, hard to say right now as I sit here, but it could be a year or 2 years in prison, and that would be my best estimate.
Karen, you've been a wealth of information. Stay with us here. We have a look at Trump's plane, and we assume that he's in Mar-a-Lago right now, his Florida estate, and so he would be taking that plane if he were to head to New York. And let's say that there was some type of surrender worked out. Perhaps he'd be taking that plane down to the New York courthouse where he could be fingerprinted with his attorneys by his side. So a lot of eyes zooming in on this plane right now and its movement.
Absolutely. Karen Conti, we appreciate you being here with us. And of course, we appreciate all the information you have provided this evening as well.
Take care.
Thank you. We'll take a quick break. More on the big news of the day, the indictment of former President Trump, right after this break.